And welcome back to our favorite moment of the podcast, the fan segment. Okay, it's time for some fan questions, which, as you know, is one of our favorite parts of the show.
Got to keep it up the whole
and
time.
And it's even better because we have Dan with us today.
We do. So here's some questions that we've gotten, especially for you, Mr. Fogelman. Who wants to take the first?
Question one.
I'm kidding. Dan asked me to do a voice, so I did a voice. All right, question one. Did the show unfold as the seasons went along, or did he know how it would go from the beginning?
It definitely unfolded as it went along. We liked to present that we had the whole thing figured out from the beginning, but the truth was it unfolded every season, and we would find little things and then go back. Like I was speaking about earlier, realizing we had pictures of the kids as young kids all over the show, and then realizing, oh, it'll be good if Jack grabs some pictures from the house during the fire. That is a small example of how it would evolve throughout.
But you did have things like I want to point out the foresight of catching footage of the kids when they were younger that you knew you wanted to use in season 6.
In the finale, the series finale, yeah.
So there are things that they would shoot, like we would shoot. I remember one, was it in season 2 where it would be 6 something, and you guys would go off and shoot these things and then save this stuff for 4.5, 5 years to use it later.
Yeah, but in reality, if I'm being honest, one of my great regrets, if I could do it all over again, is I would have done that all at the beginning of season 1 with those kids.
Sure.
And with Mandy and Milo, and I would have spent 6 months shooting tons of stuff. And, and then that could have been, and that could boyhood style, and that could have been the 6th season of the show, kind of in some ways of the backstories. I didn't have the foresight then. I did it after the 2nd or 3rd season when we were having great success.
Sure.
Even though, so it's always a hybrid of it wasn't all just pre-form.
You also, the hugest pivot that the show made to accommodate real time was the pandemic and George Floyd. And you really being intentionally saying I think our show has the ability to address these things and doing it while still keeping the track moving with the rest of the narrative of the show.
I still have the hate mail to prove it,
I'm sure, tons. Some of my favorites.
In fact, we have one right here.
Go ahead.
Dear Dan, do you know if Dan had written an alternative way that the story could go on? As in Jack not dying so soon in the show, and if he did have him in the show longer, maybe he would have died from something else and not the after effects from the house fire.
We didn't have another plan. There was, at the end of the show, there was a little bit of conversation of, nobody really wanted it to end. I knew it needed to end. And there was a little bit of conversation about talking about the family when we get to the very, very end of the series, of doing something with the family whose lives intersected with Jack at the hospital that night.
Yes.
And maybe making a completely different family born out of the night of tragedy that we would then go off and follow. So it would be more of a spin-off than a continuation. And at the end of the day, I was like, I don't want to do this without the guys. I kind of need to step back from family dramas, and we just couldn't quite figure out that we had the appetite for it.
Okay.
But that was the only place that it ever came up.
You'd pitch that as that family that intersected with them and the people that moved into the house, as a house thing.
We always talked about a couple of different pivots that This Is Us could potentially be a genre about a family, with each family has their own story to tell and the lives that intersected and the mysteries of that family. But I just couldn't see a way. We had hit our limit of runway with, we'd gone so deep in the future. I just didn't know how to continue the story any further.
All right, here's one. Could someone please ask Dan Fogelman what on earth he was trying to do to us single women? Because guys, as a long-term fan of the show, I am telling you that Jack Pearson, all the men on the show, of course, but Jack is something else, is one hell of a target for men to live up to. What's a woman meant to do out here in the real world?
Yeah.
The idealization of Jack, what were you trying to do? Ruin him for everybody?
Yeah. The ironic part is my father, who's a big, kind of like growing up was a big Jewish James Gandolfini type, was like, I'm Jack, right?
No.
Yeah, definitely. I can't believe I'm Jack.
Yeah.
But that also has to do with Milo sort of stepping in, because you would have pictured him slightly different physically, right? Initially?
I pictured him a little bit more kind of normal, pictured meaning a normal I pictured him kind of like me, right? But I always thought that the example I give was that
Seth Rogen turned the part down.
I pictured that the opening shot when you see his ass would be funny.
Got it. And not women going like, I gotta watch this trailer again and again and again.
I thought it would be like, when your wife sees like you, regular guy's ass, and she loves you.
And they laugh.
She loves you and she laughs. But like, it's not like she's like so hot that she needs you that moment. Yeah.
No, I know that feeling. Yeah.
But the ironic part about Jack in those opening seasons is like he's a very flawed dude. Like, I mean, this is a guy who's made decisions old school style for his family and his wife. Yeah. He's like very explosive at her at times. Yeah. He is an alcoholic. And I always struck me that like so many women would come after Rebecca and be like, be happy, he's hot and he's kind and he cares. With all the women, they'd come after Chrissy about Toby. They'd come after Sterling at times about Beth. You know what I mean? Like it was like it was interesting to me always that
this was like the lens of people viewing the show that always fascinated me. They viewed the Pearsons as this perfect family.
Yeah.
And it's the most imperfect on paper. If you wrote it all down, like complicated, imperfect gathering of people, but the way it was filtered through people's mind as this ideal family is also true. Yes, your family is also ideal. Every family with all of their flaws is ideal if you view it through this lens.
I think part of it too is there's so few. I mean, people had a reaction to Milo in that role, so that's part of it that you cannot just like. He was just so good in it that like you can't discard it.
I also think the way he was written, bro, is it's his imperfection that actually makes him like want to get inside more. His mystery, right, draws women
and his butt and all
the men in the show, all four of them, or five of them, were kind of. I think there's a lot of anti-hero men on TV, and there's a lot of like sitcom dads, right? But like the fundamentally decent man who's deeply flawed but is trying to be good was like a sweet spot we hit on the show with all five of our dudes, which are like, these are good people. You would frame them all as good people who are really fucked up and flawed in a multitude of ways, big and small. But they're all desperate to be good. And I think you can, the television landscape is littered with those type of guys, whether it's like Kyle Chandler and Friday Night Light, you know what I mean? Like, or like that, like, and they're few and far between because so often it's, the anti-hero. But it's even why people like James Gandolfini in The Sopranos, I mean, he was a violent mobster, but like at his heart, he just wanted to be the dad who like tended to the ducks in his backyard. So even that, it's like people just need a kernel of somebody trying to be decent to really fall in love. And then it's just the right actor in the right part.
My wife Stacy and Dan went to camp together back in the day at BRDC, Blue Rill Day Camp.
That's funny.
In the carnival episode where I believe Jack and Rebecca had their first kiss were the clown garbage cans an Easter egg for the If you know fans.
No. I wish I could say they were to make everything.
So wait, tell us about this camp.
What do you know if you know? What kind of camp did you go to with
clown garbage cans?
There were people who dressed up like clowns at the morning assembly. I'm trying to remember that part.
A lot of clowns today.
It wasn't like I went to a clown camp.
There's 100% more clown conversation than I thought there would be.
That's really funny though. The Blue Ridge
I guess we could take this last question because it is pretty funny.
If Sylvester Stallone exists in the This Is Us universe, who plays Rocky's son in the movie Rocky Balboa from 2006? And if it's still Milo, does that mean that Jack just looks a lot like Milo?
There's a lot of like Matrix style like repercussions to Sylvester Stallone being in the episode. We talked about it a lot and just went with it.
Just went with it.
But I got to go to Sly when we did that episode. I got to go to Sly's house to woo him, and we got an entry point through Milo, and we basically I think he agreed to do it because he loved Milo, even though he wasn't going to really have scenes with him in it, and his whole family and like kind of support staff at his house as I was walking in was a really big deal because they were all watching This Is Us at the time, and I think it was unclear that how familiar he was with the show, but I think he wanted to do it to like make his family happy, and it was like a very cool meeting of like driving up to Sylvester Stallone's house. I was like sitting in the house like talking to him about doing This Is Us was like really cool. That was a really cool moment.
Wow. We'll sign off. Thank you guys so much for these questions. This was great. This is our time with Dan Fogelman. Is there anything? I mean, you're onto a new show right now. We get a chance to do this thing together. In the midst of doing the new, what, if anything, do you miss of the old?
I missed the show and I missed doing that show. I mean, it was so soulfully like deep and important to me that, like there's a difference between taking a scene in another project and say, here's something intimate from my life or my life experience, and I want that to frame a scene in the show. It's like something I always try and do. When you're actually able to say, here's something intimate from my life, and then I'm going to actually execute that directly into a show without like, not just the themes of it or the exploration, but like, I'm going to like take this episode we just did and like every single character is exploring like immediate grief in a very different way, right? And that was like all the things I've gone through at multiple like losses in my life. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be able to do it directly, like in a hospital scene with a family. And so I missed that.
Is it cathartic?
It didn't at the time. I think in retrospect, I rarely look back at the show. This morning I was rushing here and I wanted to like reorient myself to the episode. So I kind of watched the first 20 minutes and the last 10. I rarely watch the show, but it is like, I don't know how much longer like I do this or how many more shows and films I'll make, but this will always be like up until I was 45 years old, it's like a screenshot of my life experience in one TV show and all the people's experience who made it, but like it's the closest I won't trump, you know what I mean, doing that show because it was just writing about my life.
Sign us off, so.
Bye.
Guys, thank you so much for being
listening.
honestly.
Dan, thank you. Thank you for coming in.
We appreciate you. Thank you, fans. If you guys like it, tell a friend, like, subscribe. Stay tuned for more. We enjoyed doing it. I hope you guys enjoyed listening and or watching. We love you. We'll see you next week. Later.